Hello and welcome to another episode of Mitten Backstage. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a great start to your summer. Today I am excited to chat with Sam Pilnick. I met Sam during my time at Western Michigan University. He is a great saxophone player, writer, educator who currently lives in Chicago. But during the years that we knew each other and our paths crossed in Kalamazoo, we were involved on certain projects together, and it is cool that he is putting out a new project record with his nonet, and we get into some details about that project today. If you enjoy podcasts like this, you can support by heading on over to patreon.com/Tracy Snedeker. There, you can contribute at different tier levels to get early access to podcast episodes, exclusive merch, and even more. You can also head over to DutcherSnedeker.com to see everything that I'm up to around the internet. Thanks again, and feel free to share this with someone who you think would enjoy these types of conversations that I'm having with other Michigan musicians. All right, let's get right into today's episode with Sam Pilnick.
Album is the only thing that's kind of been pushing me. I mean, it was supposed to be done last year, and obviously it didn't. But I get that 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, well, thanks for giving some of your time to chat, and I know you've been, I mean, even right now you could see that you're in your teaching element.
Yeah, no, you're good. It's like too much. I mean, I could have maybe raced home, but I have a rehearsal later, and it's like, let me just stay here and get some stuff done. And I have the whole setup here. It's just all ready to go, plugged in, ready to go. So but I appreciate you having me on and let me promote this album and talk and just hang and whatever. So
yeah, all the good things. So you wrote this album. Was it just like stuff that's been cooking for a while and the pandemic kind of spurred it along, or was it like during the months of uncertainty you were like, I got to focus on something?
No, it's even bigger than that. It's actually probably a year and before I even recorded it, it was probably a year and a half in the making. And then we recorded it. So let me just say to the people listening. So my new album is called The Adler Suite. It's with my nonet, Sam Pilnick's nonet project. And it's the Adler is the planetarium here in Chicago, down on the lake. And so starting in about, I guess maybe 2017, 2018 or so, 2017, I would start like writing music. I actually went on a field trip with some students there. And, I'm a music teacher, but I got pulled to go on this trip, and I just started writing music and like started writing all these tunes. And I was like, oh, I think there's something here for an album, after a while. So after maybe, a year and a half of writing and playing gigs and fleshing out ideas, and this album came to be. And then, I was supposed to do it certain times, and then it just happened like that I was able to get a grant from the city of Chicago to help record it. They do these artist grants, which is really helpful. And we recorded it in February of 2020, like literally a month before the world shut down. And it was, supposed to be out late last year or sometime last year. And then, obviously with everybody else, I mean, it's the same story for everybody in every project. Doesn't matter what genre, whatever you're hearing. It's like, oh, I was supposed to do this, and then the pandemic happened, and then it's got pushed back. And that's kind of what happened. And then it really wasn't until like the fall where I started mixing and stuff and started to get into that process of mixing and getting it out there, and wasn't sure, obviously, what the world was going to look like to even perform this at some point in the, in the relative future, or to, to do anything with it. So I'm glad, like, I'm vaccinated. A lot of the people in my band are vaccinated. Things in the city of Chicago are opening up again, and things are happening, and was able to work with a good label and all this other stuff to kind of get it done. And now it's done. And so finally this summer, and so, it's one of those things like you plan and you plan and you plan, and now it's here. And it's like, I yesterday or in May, I put out this little teaser thing, and it was like, okay, now it's actually real, because I hadn't posted anything about it. People knew about it. I've talked about it a lot with friends and stuff. almost incessantly sometimes. And actually putting out like a promo and the album art and some behind the scenes and one of the like kind of a taste of one of the songs, that was the first I had done with it at all. Like I've been sitting on this stuff for, I've had the CDs for 2 months probably. And the vinyl are getting done. Hopefully I just put in the order to hopefully they're going to start pressing the vinyl soon. But I've had the CDs for 2 months, and sitting on those and sitting on all this stuff to try and appropriately time it out, kind of in conjunction with the label, in conjunction with the publicist, to kind of see what's up. So really it's been like almost a 2.5 year thing. In reality of like conception, composition, recording, the post-production, it's been a really long journey, long trip it's been, like the Grateful Dead thing. So, but I'm really happy with it. I'm really pleased with it. The band sounds amazing. It's some of our friends are on it. Matt Smolligan and Megan Stagel play on it extensively, as well as just a lot of killing people. And Ted, Ted? Okay?
Yeah, yep.
And Ted's on it. So the good Kalamazoo representation in West Michigan and stuff on the album, even though it was recorded, everything down here. So
yeah, well, and I think the way that you put the album together, just logistically, it's like I feel like it's a good like example of a route people should think about when like if every artist had endless money, then it would be like, okay, yeah, then you just go to the studio and do the thing. But you have the concept, the music, the players, and then it's like, okay, what resources are in the city? All right, there's this grant. Let's, now you're starting to not just have an album be, this like creative thing that you put out into the world that, it's like, that's cool. And everything surrounding that's great. But now the album is like, oh, for this album, I got better at grant writing. I got better at networking with certain parts of the arts organizations in the city. I now have a better understanding of like how to put an album out because I've worked with a label. And yeah. How was the labels? Is it like you have a contracted thing with them, or did they sign you to the label? Or
yeah, so it's more of a contracted thing. I think one thing that people aren't good at doing, I think you and I are good at, and some people are, it's like realizing like the scene. We were joking before about having 8 million followers on your Patreon. Like, yeah, but realistically, like if you can have some, it's for a lot of us, and I think we want more quality than quantity per se.
Yep.
And I understand my situation. I understand where I'm at. As a jazz musician, as a saxophone player in this city, I've only been here, I've finished my 4th year here. So I know people, and I teach full time, which, a lot of people who teach full time don't necessarily have the opportunities to go out and play, or don't kind of give up the performing aspects of it. So, I'm talking obviously pre-pandemic, like going to sessions and having to leave like early at like 12:30 and people being like, oh, you're cool, we get it, you got to go teach in the morning. Like, but at least I'm there, and kind of getting some rep. I think I might have frozen a little bit, but a little bit of at least understanding of like, oh yeah, okay, he's doing it, and I think, a lot of our teachers, and it was really when we were in school, we were in school together, but at the same school, that a lot of that, like the concepts of being a good player to be a good musician. So to come back to the original question is, so I wanted to do everything I wanted to do in Chicago as I could. So it was mixed in the city. It was, the vinyl pressing is here in Chicago. It's all Chicago people, or people who've spent time here, young people, whatever, and it was recorded here. And the label thing is like, you kind of have to just reach out and just email everybody. It's like booking gigs, basically. Like, here's my album, here's the concept, here's what I want to do with it. Can you help me? And, you get some responses back. I got a lot of positive things with some labels that were maybe going under just because of the manpower or whatever. And then I also had been reaching out to, I'm doing it through Outside in Music in their Next Level imprint. So it's not their main one, it's the one under, which is, I think is cool. And they're hooked me up with Lydia Liebman Productions, which, she's like the top the top of the top of the, jazz publicists and stuff. And she really liked the album, I guess, and was able to promote it. And and they kind of working with me a little bit on like the CD production, on some of the marketing, and they have it really structured smartly, that it's kind of like a menu of things, like whatever you want to do and whatever your vision is, they'll help you. They'll suggest certain things like, hey, I think we should do this, or I think you should do that, and here's what the cost is in-house versus if you go through some other people. And there's like even on the publicist route, like Lydia is their top choice, but her people are probably always so busy. So, but they have other options. And it's not even really that relatively expensive per se, in the hindsight of it, based on who she represents and who her lineage and stuff. She's David's daughter. And and you hopefully you're getting something out of that route. So Nick Finzer and Alan Blanchard have been really supportive and helpful. And I email them, he gets back to me. We call, we text. He emailed me today, I email him right back. We're responding within seconds. So it's very responsive. And I think the big thing that's also important is like, so anything I sell, I keep my masters, and then the split, it's only like an 80-20 split off of like Amazon and stuff. So I think they have a warehouse distribution thing and whatever they get. So that, there's some margins there, which is which is fine with me. I get, like I said, keep the masters, which is always really important. A lot of the royalties I get back, whatever that means in this world.
Right.
And they've been really supportive, so I'm really glad to. And I know Nick, and I know his reputation, and I know people who've worked with them. And the artist rosters, the main artist rosters, you look, it's Lucas Pino, Roxy Koss, Nick Finzer obviously puts his own stuff out there. You look at whoever it is, it's a large, it's Ulysses Owen Jr. just put out a record through them. Like I think Stephen Feike's big band records through them. There's
nice.
It's like reputable people, and they care, and they seem supportive and stuff. So, and I've done the record that you were on of mine. The other ones like. I was like, I'll just do it. And I think I made a mistake not going through these labels and stuff, just a pure ignorance, maybe, just not really knowing. And maybe it would have been I think it maybe would have gotten more traction and stuff, whatever that means, at least to get it, you spend all this work and all this, I'm talking about money. Like, it's expensive to put out a record, and in reality, and it's not just, it's also like, it's money, but it's your own time and other people's time and the creative time. And, I wish I would have done it differently in those other ones, which is, you learn, you live and you learn.
Yep.
And you try and make, when you do this one, okay, I didn't like what I did on that one, I'm going to try and do this. So like when I dealt with an artist, I like knew the covers, I knew what I wanted, or I knew what I wanted to do with this and video and all this other stuff. So, you try and at least kind of learn from those changes, and you try and figure out, okay, like what's the best way to go. That's also not going to be expensive. The grant route is, like you were saying, is important. But now they're even, I would imagine, even harder to get. Like I applied for a grant, didn't get it, which is, fine. It's a lot of savings and a lot of, making some smart financial decisions to like hopefully be in a place where you can do it. And also, theoretically, I probably, you could wait on those, but if you do a grant, you got to be careful. There might be some stipulations about when you have to spend it, when the project has to be out. Technically, because of the city, it had to be out last year. Then they extended it to the end of this year. So once it's out, like I'm good with the city. And I think they just don't want people taking the money and sitting on it, not doing anything with it. So if you do a grant, like you just have to read all the fine print and stuff and figure that out. So I'm really glad that, with this project and everything, and it's a long labor of love like everything else, but so.
Yeah. Just I think it is as much as like, people are like, they want to feel like, oh, it's DIY, I can do all this myself. A lot of artists I look up to are, multifaceted. They understand a bit of marketing, or they understand, the production end, and they can, take an idea from start to print by themselves. But there's also something to be said about like using a label to your advantage. I mean, in your situation, it helped with like, taking something you spent a lot of time artistically on and just like packaging it and plugging it in the right kind of avenues. And I think of a band I often reference as an example, Periphery, this metal band that's been around for over 10 years now, I think. I started following them in like middle school, high school. And they, they built kind of an engine of sorts because everyone in the band is multifaceted, like everyone's got gear endorsements or they test products and develop products. The band itself has everything from, clothing merch to coffee to beer to like, they've branched out their brand. And then they can pretty successfully self-produce all their own records with maybe one extra set of ears for like mixing and mastering. But they because of all of the the skills coming together, they didn't sign to a label for like years, even though they were approached by like Roadrunner and Century Media and like all these bigger people, because the deal wasn't there, or they the volume they had to push they were already doing on their own for sales. And then they only took the label help when they knew they had reached a point where they're expanding to a global market.
And
they're like, we need someone to help ship things to Europe.
I mean, and obviously like the metals, rock and roll, I would more popular music, I would say. I mean, you got to make the right deal. You got to look at the right people. And, at the end of the day, it's like, it's your music, it's your stuff. And if you have the ability and like, again, if it's a band where it's like, okay, we're a bunch of friends and we've come together and we've been playing music since we were kids and we're kind of like growing as a collective. Yeah, it's one thing to say, okay, you do this and kind of keep each other accountable. It's one thing like if it's your band per se, I can't really speak on other people. The one thing that comes to mind is like, I feel like a Snarky Puppy situation where maybe that was going on originally until maybe they got too big. But I think Michael League's doing everything pretty much. Yeah. And, and I guess he's able to finance his way do that or made certain sacrifices early on to put himself in that situation. I mean, I just think there's like just also kind of a stigma of like not asking for help, and also a type of like having creative control over these things. So, I mean, for example, like the art vision for the album, I worked with a great person, a great musician, great artist. I saw some of her work. I said, this is kind of what I wanted to do, but I'll let you do whatever this time. Because in the past, like the first album I did all the artwork. I think it's a little bit of being narcissist, but an artistic narcissist. The second time I was like a little heavy-handed, and I don't think he was super happy working with me because I was being a little bit too that way. But again, you're paying somebody to do it. If you don't like it, you got to stand up. If you have a vision, especially if you don't really know how to do like to create the vision. And then this time I was like the most hands off. I said so the album art is based on this painting that's at the Adler. It's this called Milky Way. It's by Frederick Brown. I think he's since deceased. But I you just reach out to there, you do some Googling and you reach out. So his trust or whoever runs the trust was like, yeah, sure. Let's just see what it is. And Sarah was like, I want you to work on this. And she pulled some things. So those splashes are on it or pulled from the painting himself. And she had her own vision based on the vision. And I was like really impressed. Like, some tinks here and there, and it's really cool. Like the vinyl printing is slightly different than the CD, which is a really cool thing because it's only 2-panel versus the 4-panel, and and kind of being okay with like, oh, you do you, and of trusting people to like agree on your vision like that. And I did that with video, like the first single that's coming out in June. I mean, I ended up doing all the editing work myself because I was gonna like try and do again. I think partially it was pandemic based because being in a room with somebody and editing the video, I was like gonna do a demo and I was like, I'll just do it and then just YouTubing it, and I actually really enjoy how it came out and everything. But I think all that it's like a lot of times the label also can like get you to a place where you're not, and again, like, do you really want to sit there and create a one sheet and create and have to stuff envelopes and take, and like again, like, there's just little things that the label, if you are the right one and you're working with the right people, that can kind of springboard those things that you don't have to do it. Yeah, it's money, but it's also time.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, like I feel like if I just emailed Lydia Liebman, she wouldn't get back to me. But because it went through the label, it's a trust thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So she trusts Nick and Al and whoever and the whole outside of music people. They're not going to send her something that they don't really support. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they would be nice and be like, well, maybe you should not do this and do something. Who knows? They didn't do that, but they could have.
Yep.
And then, or Lydia, because, but again, like springboarding. And I have a good friend in the city, great drummer, Gustavo Cortinas, who's working with Wool Gathering Records. It was the same thing. He wanted to be local, Matt Ullery's record label.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say.
And he had a connection to Lydia and all these other opportunities and being local. The local thing didn't work out for me. I mean, it's fine, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, so, but the thing is, it's like, trying to work with people that can see your vision. And I think you kind of said it, like they probably didn't work with a label because I'm sure they wanted too much of the royalties. I'm sure they wanted the masters. I'm sure they want like bigger labels do that. I think because I'm dealing, and I know you deal with a lot of more creative music, it's not as big, maybe if you're dealing with a Blue Note, I can't speak for that or those people.
Right.
I don't know, or the bigger labels, a Steeplechase or Impulse, if that's still around.
Somewhere,
I don't really know the jazz label.
Mac Avenue, maybe. I don't know.
Mac Avenue. I mean, maybe the ones that are quote unquote big, but I just think now it's like you got to go with somebody who's gonna like support you in that way, just like you would like with your band, or just like you would with in any fashion of people to support your music, and you could still have like a good say over it. Versus like a corporate thing. Now, again, I don't know if that exists in the jazz creative music world anymore. Right. Maybe it did in the 60s and the 70s, and maybe it died on then. I don't know. I can't really speak to that.
Yeah, it's like the closest you might get is like looking at like, Brain Feeder or something where it's a jazz element being placed in, like a Thundercat, like a progressive neo soul type R&B thing, or a electronic thing like Daedalus, or I don't know, Nowhere, like this kind of electro funk pop with crazy instrumentation.
But kind of knowing him, like I mean, I've met him one time, and kind of, I mean, you gotta also, I mean, it's also just like the perception of their social media game could just not necessarily equal up to exactly what's happening. They could just be so talented at the social media aspects of it and being so creative in content creation that, a label, they're just doing their own thing. And then maybe they're working with a publicist or whoever. I don't really know those examples. Like, I'm sure that to me, it seems like those bands that you said, I know her, because I know more like, Lewis Cole and stuff. I mean, I don't know him, but like, knowing of him, and we've met him before, but whatever. Like, it just seems to me like he has such a big idea. Like, he just has so many big ideas, and that he's probably working with like, he probably knows a ton of people in LA, artists and whoever. And I'm sure he's, probably has a publicist and probably has people that are helping him with that stuff, or booking agencies. And I would imagine it seems most of it is him. It's not, not a mass market. It's hard in our world too, because a lot of what we deal with is it's big in our world because it's our world, but it's not necessarily big in the scope of the market, or of music, or of content,
Yeah.
So it's hard to figure that out, but like anything else, it's just like perseverance, and there's always something for somebody, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and if you're able to kind of work it out and find people who are willing to work with you and be effective for you, like, then you got to take those opportunities, because there's only so much, unless you, again, are like have such a niche market in social media where you're getting views and people are just going to buy your stuff. But at the same time, like, I can't understand, like, if you have so much content that's making like, say, thousands of views and whatever,
right?
Where do you have the time to not only create that content, develop other content, have a semblance of a life, and then if you're also booking stuff and you're producing, I don't understand how people do it. And that's where I get to the thing where it's like, there's no way they're doing it all by themselves.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you have one of those like time turner Harry Potter things. Are you like going back in time and stuff? Like you have 25 hours in your day.
Yeah.
I don't get it, man. But to those who are listening, you guys just got to do, you got to find your project and you got to just kind of make the moves. And if it's not right, you sit on it if you can, and, and find the right opportunities when they present themselves.
Yeah. I think of someone like, thinking of like, how do you balance time? I think of someone like Bill Wirtz. I don't know if you've seen any of his videos. He's like, he kind of started out on Vine and doing these, those short little clipped videos, but they're like goofy with like light animation, and sometimes it synced up with the beats and stuff, and it's kind of quirky, some humor, some existential life thinking in like very abstract, funny terms. And then when he kind of made the jump to YouTube, he took those skills and expanded them into full tracks. And so you have these like detailed animated videos that are like, it's not, like, oh, it's so detailed, it looks lifelike. It's literally just like, like stick figure drawings and like weird color shifts and like just shapes and things placed weird, and like visual storytelling with like goofy, like seemingly nonsensical songs. But he has a video called The History of the World, where it's like a 20-minute video.
Oh yeah, I've seen that, dude.
Yeah. Okay. So it's got like what, like hundreds or like tens of millions of views now. And he doesn't, like, the only time I've seen him other than in that world, he's done like 2 podcasty type interviews, and then he was in a Scary Pockets video. So someone like him, who's got a very hyper niche creative output, and like, yes, the videos get turned into albums, but he's not printing CDs. He's just making random singles and they're going up for streaming. He's a weird model of like, he doesn't seem to interface with the public ever unless it's in a video. And he's found great success in that, and it suits kind of how he operates. But he talked about like just the amount of work it goes into like, crafting the song with the layers, and then each layer is like, there's opportunities within the arrangement to place like, oh, a little hit, or like he'll do like a MIDI horn stab and little horn emojis will flash on the screen for a second, and like he's just syncing up all these details with the music. And because he's so invested in that, that's probably why he's not like touring.
That
or
video
something.
Is 4 years old yesterday.
Okay.
Has 119,400,000 views.
That's a lot.
But also, I'm just looking more at like the comment box, not the comments, but like, you look at this thing, it just says his website, Patreon, Spotify, iTunes, Twitter, Instagram, Donate, and SoundCloud. Who knows how much money he's getting from YouTube? Right. I don't know his person. I don't know this guy than anybody else. And it's like, if you can find a niche market, that's awesome. And if you can capitalize on a niche market, that's even better. That means you've kind of won, I would imagine. But yeah, I can only imagine how long these videos, especially with a 20-minute animated video and there's songs and there's all this other stuff. It's, but you have to have the concept. And that's the thing, like with this stuff, it's like, everything has to have a concept, and you have to then have the wherewithal to fill that concept and find that concept and figure out how to get it out to the world. He got lucky, it's like he could have done this whole thing and then He went nowhere, and then he's just doing a day job, and then or that Binging with Babish guy on YouTube.
Yep.
Like that's his. I mean, his first videos are not very good, but they're interesting. And then I think he was doing 2 jobs, to a point where he could make it lucrative. And again, like he's a one in a insert number, large number success. I'm sure this guy Bill Wirtz is same thing. Like it's impossible to recreate their trajectory.
Yeah, I brought him up mainly as an example of like the imbalance sometimes can work in in a very specific circumstance, but also I see those types of people, and I don't go, I want to get millions of followers, because that's not a realistic goal, because everyone who gets to that point, they're like, I don't know, I just kept doing stuff, and then suddenly there was this audience, and now I have so I just see it as an opportunity of like, if you can have like a core following that's on and offline, you have more people to work with in terms of like when you put something out, or when you go on tour, or you do anything, there's an audience there to support, even if it's like I think of like we did a campaign to promote a couple of the singles off of Reanimate, Earth Radio's last album, and I was noticing in the Spotify for Artists metrics that we started getting a ton of listeners like in Germany and like I think Germany, England, and Spain, I think. So it was like, does that mean, oh, we can go on tour? It's like, no, not necessarily, but it's interesting to see like, oh, there are people, like if you add up like, okay, 50 people over here, 1,000 people here, 100 people here, like it's more of an audience than you think online. And now you're starting to think of like, okay, what am I putting out into the world that is gonna support the people that are always around me and are in the community that I'm creating in, but also is able to have legs that stretch a little further and allow opportunities down the road, versus just like what I think a lot of West Michigan artists do is they're all fans, or they know of the local outlets to put things out to, and they get kind of comfortable in that loop of like, all right, the album comes out, it's my friends hear it, it goes on the local radio station, and then people forget about it until the next one. And then 10 years later is like, this person's been in Grand Rapids, and it's like, all right, are you May Erlewine? Do you have that kind of Michigan following? Or are you, someone who is still, not cracking through the mold? Like, what is, success is, it varies obviously, and people have different measures of success, but it's interesting to see, in recent years, a lot more people interested in the business end of it because of, trying to understand the internet, ways to put things out into the world, and, be as present as they can be in person, but also, on Instagram or something, like figuring out what that looks like.
Well, it'd be interesting that's based on kind of what you were saying, like on, at least understanding trend, like where your music's being listened to. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see like in the next, year, 6 months, 8 months to a year, like as more live stuff kinds of happens, like where will people start kind of going back into that? And will this pandemic or the lack of art and lack of music, like, will there be a resurgence of people to see shows and stuff, and to actually go and be, even if there's 50 people, say, you were talking, in an area where you can make it work, and, where you can play a few shows, and you get 50 great people to show up, or 40 of those 50 great people to show up, like that could be a killing. You hear stories, like whatever, the first time the Beatles played in this club in Liverpool, and like be like, oh shit, like, I'm sure it was super crazy, like, doesn't, or like I just think, if you can have a following and get people out to see it, I mean, that's good. I'm glad, people are checking this stuff out. And it always would be interesting to see like where it goes, in the future, and how we can kind of get it out there. And I think, like kind of going what you're saying is like the comfortability of things. It's like, I think we just like to be comfortable. Oh, this works for me. Like if I, especially in West Michigan, I love living in Kalamazoo. Don't get me like, I had to leave. I was getting comfortable and I felt like I was kind of plateauing, and it was just like, all right, well, I need to be in the big city, and I kind of have to do my thing. And, coming to Chicago was like really wide open, and you meet people who are just killing, like, music wise, and like, to do things and like to have and see music and hear it. And even though I can complain about certain aspects, it's no New York here, but it's good. I mean, there's a lot of great artists, a lot of great talent, a lot of great people, a lot of really kind, supportive people. I mean, I had this band, like, I moved here in 2017, like literally when that video was put out, which is funny in hindsight. And like started meeting people like right away, and people in the band I've known for 4 years. Now I'm not talking about the Michigan people I've known for longer, but the people, right. The people I just going to sessions. Hey, what's up? Who are you? Where are you from? Yada yada yada. Like coming right from school or coming from another city, and just trying to like be honest about their art, or trying to do this whatever we're doing, and putting out music and being creative and trying to find that stuff, and trying to and I think it'll be interesting to see kind of in these cities or in these areas, this Midwestern area, like what kind of happens from this whole thing. I mean, I have a few concepts of my own, which would be nice to work out once more and more people feel comfortable, gathering indoors, with or without, whatever, appropriately spaced and stuff. But, I think there is a good opportunity for people to break out of that comfort zone and like do things and be in spaces where non-traditional spaces making music. And that, so, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I know there's a super strong West Michigan scene, and which is, I think, surprised me, I think, also when I moved, I moved to Michigan, never only going to work at Blue Lake and basically spending time there and leaving, and a little bit of time in Kalamazoo and a little bit of time in Ann Arbor, and like when I say a little bit, I mean like a day. But it's a great place, and there's a great scene, and there's great scenes, but I can totally understand like cost of living, the quality of life is pretty decent. If you like beer, you're set. You want to play music, like you can have everything, and then it's especially if it's an older generation, it's like, well, it's working. I'm cool with this. Grant, my music gets played on the radio, and cool. And for some people that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of, me. I was thinking about like last year. I was reflecting a lot on things because of this, slowing down. I kind of had a second to be like, all right, what if, I'm 28, turned 29 this year. What things have I accomplished? And of course you could be like, oh, I got the 2 degrees, and I've done, like the bag in a can thing in 2016, and a national parks tour, and with the Grand Valley's New Music Ensemble, like just picking out little things that were like, that was fun, that was really cool. And then it's like finding the common thread of like, okay, why did I like those things? What do I need to do to have those same, like, what do I need to do to like have that combination of feeling challenged, feeling like I'm leveling up somehow, feeling like I'm branching out, and part of it is, focusing on the like sharing kind of what I'm up to, trying new, like the podcasting thing, trying new platforms. This summer I'm actually going to get into some different types of video content just to, just try that and keep on that, because I do like that as a medium, like I want to understand that a little better.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to, like Earth Radio, I want to level up. We've been talking in the band, like we're actually doing a a band meeting to kind of hone our goals now that things are on the upswing a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
of just like, hey, what do we want to do with this band? Where do we see ourselves? What roles do we see ourselves in the band? Like, how can we adjust that? Because it is like the same discussion of also of like, hey, we should do this thing. All right, well, I don't really know how to do it. Okay, do you want to learn how to do it? No, I don't like doing that. Okay, then we need to hire someone. All right, we don't have any money. Okay, well, then we can't really hire anyone. All right, let's do it ourselves. But you don't want to do it. So,
Yeah, I mean that's like the comfort, and unfortunately, I mean that's I think a little bit of the comfortability of like West Michigan vibe. It's like, well, I don't want to do if I don't have to do, I don't have to do it. I won't do it, and
I won't
that's
do
a
it.
bit. Then you gotta just be like, well, I guess we're not doing it, and then you gotta move on to something else. And I haven't, that's a very interesting thing because I also necessarily haven't really been. I've been in very limited situations where it's like a true collective like that. Like I'm involved with this group called the Chicago Freedom Ensemble. I'm like a co-director under Thaddeus Tukes and with Akshat Jain, and like we tried to do it more collectively like that, and it was a little bit all over the place. It's kind of like the three of us running things, even though we kind of assist one person, even though we kind of bounce ideas off each other and this, but I haven't necessarily been in that situation where it's like, okay, this is my ensemble where, it's all been like my name based things.
Yeah.
And I think there's like, I don't know the right way to say it. I think there's definitely like, you have to be, if you're going to be in a group like that, where it's like, okay, collective, like everyone needs to essentially be almost on the same page. Like you were talking earlier about that rock band that does all those things. Like, again, yeah, they're friends, but they could have been like, it could have been like that. Like, I don't want to do that. And then like, well, then we're not going to do it. And then it might hurt us down the road because we have no money or whatever. We don't have enough money for it. And you don't want to do it. And I'm doing this. And because again, like you could do it and then it just becomes a burden on you. And then it's really not necessarily equitable for everybody involved, especially if you're claiming to be like a big, like collective essentially,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would assume Earth Radio was yours because I know you're like the leader of it, but I mean, it's good to know, interesting to know that like, okay, it's more of a collective situation versus like your band per se.
Yeah, and I think after 3 albums, we've kind of figured out, at least with the core group, because we recently added some other collaborators, and the core 4 people who've been in the band the longest, we, just in terms of like plain statements of like these things have happened, like Hannah and Justin, main songwriters, they've written the most songs for the band. I've contributed some, but it's mainly Hannah and Justin writing the tunes. I'm there to assist or create an idea, or like if they want me to do something, I don't really like, they could point at a keyboard and tell me to play it and I'll figure something out. It's just the nature of like being in the studio with the band, where like we get stuff pre-pro'd a little bit, we go in and track, and then there's always like the layering of the cake. And then I've done a lot of the behind the scenes businessy type stuff. Hannah assists with that as well. And Justin's kind of the main producer of the band. We all have input and we all use our ears for feedback, but he's the one that kind of ties it up and ends whatever mixing session like, oh, this is at a good spot, and then sends it off to get mastered.
It's good to have a way to like have somebody have to like put their foot down and stuff, and and it could be tricky like in a collaborative situation to be that person and make sure that like voices are heard, but also like at the end of the day we could be sitting here for 2 hours talking about this, and then especially if you're in the studio and you're paying out, that's money.
Yep.
It's not like you're sitting in your house on, Logic, you're in a studio or you're doing, or, trying to move it along. So it's good to see that there's that y'all have an idea about at least some structure into it. When you do things myself, that's where kind of tying it back in, it's like where the label can kind of come in and help, or, I run a lot of stuff off my roommate, Akshat Jain, who, who did a lot of help when we were in the studio and when we were listening to the vinyl pressings and all these other, I'd be like, can you listen to this? And just be like, what's up? Or like, I just did album art for the single and he would like, try this. And I'm like, yeah, I don't like it. But I like, but I like that. This other thing he said, and I think also as like a producer or someone who wants to create, like who has been in these situations, like, yeah, it's important to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, but also to be like, it's my idea. It's my thing. Yeah. I love you, but I love you and I respect you. And of course I want your opinion, which I've asked for clearly.
Right.
But also to make sure that like there is somebody helping to push the thing forwards. Otherwise it just, I think a lot of that stuff can end up stalling out.
Yeah, because especially like with a nonet, like you taking the reins of that is like, yes, everyone can kind of have a inherent understanding of like, all right, I'm part of a 9-piece band. There are written out parts. There are, little liberties of like, oh, the guitar's soloing in this one, or the saxophones are trading, or, any of that type of stuff. But it's, there's a point where you can't just take, have a sit down with 8 other people and be like, well, do you like this transition section? How do you like this part written? Do you like, it's like you have so much to get through.
Right. But it's also nice to be like, what did you mean by this?
Right.
And be like, what did you mean by when you wrote this? Like, who was it with? Or do you actually want to be, and actually having like productive chamber rehearsals essentially, where it's like, no, actually, I want to play like how it's written, or, oh, good question. Like, you're playing it like that. Oh, can you change it up? Or, yeah, that sounds weird, and that's why I always ask is like, please let me, like, I always ask to the people, I mean, it's like, if there's a weird thing in your part or it's written poorly or you're hearing something, like, I like to be heard and say like, because again, like, not perfect, with your, especially with 9 parts, write a tune, it's like, gotta write a tune, then you gotta arrange it, then you gotta make sure all the line, doing all the notation stuff, which I haven't thankfully done in a long time, but that there's always, no matter how many times you check it, there's always like a missing something or other.
Yeah.
And and sometimes it helps. And again, like being in a creative situation with people who you trust, more so than like, again, I would rather be with those. I chose those people to be in the band. I'm sure same thing with Earth Radio. I'm sure thing with your you have your trio thing, all your projects. It's like, yeah, it's good. It helps when people are good at their instrument. Mm-hmm. But it also is more important that they're fun to be around when you're in that rehearsal or you're in the studio for 2 full days and or you're playing the gigs or you're doing those things. Cause I mean, everyone, that's where it's better off.
Yeah, it helped. Like that's at least one thing that's been nice with Earth Radio is that at the core, it's for people who have already been friends and, we've spent, I think of 2019, which was, our second year as a band, but definitely our busiest, like a lot of our first festival plays, like our first, more than just 2 days in a row, like doing, 4 or 5 days in a row. And like, yeah, all the times in cars, pre-pandemic, like, oh, just stay on someone's couch somewhere. And that, that core element is a reason why it's easy to play with the group. Like, yes, there's, differences in approach to art and within the band, there's a shared, expression and goal with everything and everyone's got their own opinions. But there's also a difference in like like me and Madison being like studied, trained collegiate musicians versus, Justin and Hannah in terms of the core band are more like just natural talent that has been sculpted over like years of gigging and,
sure.
Figuring out their sounds and voice through like just different projects and different things. Justin, especially, like just having, if he has an idea for an album, he's not afraid to, put it down to paper and make it. Like, I think he just put out an album where he did all the tracking himself and worked with a couple engineers. Nice. But there's also the, as much as there is the creative side of the band, there, we've talked about the label discussion of like where could we seek someone out that would support some of these efforts, because there's like, you have merch, and merch is selling okay. Like, we are still kind of marketing to our home base, and a lot of people who already know about us already have at least one shirt or a vinyl, and now it's like, okay, how do we branch this out regionally? And like,
I mean, the person you really need is not necessarily a label. You need a publicist, and you need like a producer. Like you need like somebody to like either like basically a publicist. I think.
Yeah,
I think that's your move. It's again because I think the label may not like again, or they might charge you for. I mean, they say here's a label, and then they charge anyway. Or they might. Again, like it depends on what your goals are, but I feel like the label thing is because I think if you have to look at it how it was and how it is.
Yeah.
Right? How it was like, yeah, okay, I'm on a label, and yeah, maybe they're giving me an advance, but it's like, here's a team of people, but they know they're going to make tons of money, so they're not really super worried about it. So you're not paying for a publicist, you're not paying for certain things because they know that you're going to sell hundreds of thousands of copies and be on MTV or go on the road or whatever. But I think if you can deconstruct some of those things about what are some of the things that maybe a traditional label would normally provide an artist, and then just search those people out separately.
Yeah.
And just figure out, okay, who can see our vision and where our growth, can find us, like whether it's a publicist or just a general person who's a publicist / social media person / whatever, and you work something out where they're I don't know, whatever you deal with, but like to have something and then that could help kind of expand it versus like a label per se. The label I think is going to help more with the album, like putting out projects and being associated. I think it's probably good to be on a label because again, like if you're trying to get write-ups, if you're trying to play tours, again, they look at your album, they see the album or radio. Okay, they open it up, they see, Earth Radio. Oh, they're on blah, blah, blah records. Okay, who's on? Oh, I know that record. They have all these other people.
Yeah.
And then you, again, your social media person again could like then do all the other stuff of like, helping you get on, booking, getting you out there, pushing the merch, pushing the giggings, whatever you want to call that person or people, and trying to find people you can theoretically work with that's not going to make you go bankrupt. But again, I think there's people out there or people who are willing to do it, nominally, I would imagine. We find the right people. Mm-hmm. I think that goes back to, again, more of our original conversation. It's like, we want to be these like gym class heroes and just do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And is that really the safest thing or really the most logical thing in the future?
Yeah. Well, and especially like, I think of this past year where I had, there was that slowdown, but still that, collegiate, musician brain kicking in and being like, no, you got to keep doing something. You got to draft this thing, write this thing, do this. There was a point where I was just like, I kind of, it was another, like, I'm almost 30, like, a meaningless marker, but it's also like everyone thinks about another zero.
I'm almost there, dude. I get you.
And, in my head, I'm like, I was thinking about my 20s and then like, what do I want my 30s to be? It was like my 20s were a lot of like, just throwing all the things at all of the walls and being in lots of different groups and being in different schools, different city environments, different, whatever, different, styles of music. And and seeing, what I like about collaborating or recording, or, the components that I like as a performer and freelancer, but not a lot of like, a lot of late nights that are, not a lot of self-care, not a lot of like, having that balance between like, yes, you're going to have certain nights where you're going to, I had a couple weeks ago where I had a video that was rendering late, and I was like, cool, I'll fall asleep, and probably when I, get up at night to use the bathroom or something, I'll see that the video's done rendering, and I'll quick like, get it scheduled and uploaded like at 3 a.m. or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then there has to be another night where it's like, oh, I'm actually going to sleep before, I don't know, 11, and
Mm-hmm.
and like getting up at a decent time and going on a walk, or cooking your own food, or just like these very simple
man, I feel
things.
that. I mean, like, and now I was like that for a while. I mean, like, I definitely was okay to do nothing, and I definitely didn't practice as much as probably I should have, or
Right.
whatever, or written more music or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think, I think it's okay, and it's like I think like you got to just figure out, okay, again, you throw, like you said, you throw a bunch of stuff together, and then you start refining it and trying to figure out like what works and what doesn't work, and you just throw away what doesn't work and you do what works, and it's okay. Like, okay, because again, if you're dead, like, I mean, this is the first week I feel like I'm back like to like some semblance of like pre-pandemic life. Like, I'm not going to be, I have a rehearsal, so I'm still at work.
Yep.
I taught all day. I only have like 2 weeks. We're doing, I teach on Zoom, and it's like a mess, and that's getting kind of annoying. And then I'm talking with you. Then I have to like run to a rehearsal, and then who knows how long that's going to be, and then kind of go home. Tomorrow I'm looking at my calendar. I work all day, the same thing. I'm doing recruiting for next year. I'm teaching all day. Then I have to leave to go to a meeting before a jam session that I'm playing at and running. But in that drive, I have to call the label, and because figure out because we're getting close, and kind of he wanted to check in. Great. Thursday, teaching all day. Then I have a jobbing gig. And it's cool. Friday, and then Friday, I'm like, oh my god, look at this, like, oh, I'm cool. And then like I have some time off in the afternoon. And Saturday I have a gig, and and then it's like, okay, then it's Sunday, like, and I'm not really nothing, but I have to teach a student. You start like looking at these things, you're just like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, and then I'm talking about this like with a friend. She's like, yeah, you should like come over and like, come over. And I was like, because I'm, this girl I'm seeing, I'm like, first of all, I haven't seen her. She's out of town. She's busy. She's working, and I'm working, and I don't even, it's. And I'm just like, I was talking to somebody else about like, she's like, a colleague was running around like dinner. I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to eat dinner at home all week, at least. And there was definitely like a day like last week I felt like, was it last week? Oh yeah, last week I was home for a few hours. Or the week before that I came home. There was enough stuff going on. I literally came home to like, in the 1 hour I listened to the test pressings. My album. I was like, all right, gotta go to bed and do this all again in the morning. But,
here we go.
Yeah, but and we complain. It's easy to complain about, and I think we really enjoy what we do, and we get the joy out of it when we see when you like put the vinyl on. I mean, you said you have vinyl for Earth Radio. I mean, like that feeling of, actually got me on Instagram opening the test pressing, being like, ooh, and you hear me say ooh on the thing. It's like so embarrassing, but it's like for real. Like, and you go, like all this labor, like 2 years of writing music and going to the planetarium and rehearsing and these shitty gigs and other gigs and then recording for 2 days and a pandemic and a pandemic and then all the mixing and the mastering and the video, all this shit. And then they literally take this fucking piece of plastic and put it down and put the needle on it, and you hear the first note.
You're like,
oh, this is all worth it, dude. This is it. This is it,
Yeah.
And, and I think like, we can go, this is another contest, another podcast, but like, the whole mental health thing, even though we've been out of school for 6 years or whatever, 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, does it really matter? Like the collegiate grind.
Yeah, I just think of like
Not sustainable.
no, I my undergrad was so like I forget it. It was someone who I've known for a while, but they they're not a musician, or they don't really talk with musicians in that capacity. And they were talking about like like college parties, and like, oh yeah, I went to this thing and it was this big rager, and like, oh, they threw it, the couch was on fire, and I'm like, what? It's like mine was. I think I went to one of those and I was already of age, and just being like, this is crazy. there's a lot of, it's like I showed up at my friend's house, and there's like like 20 people already starting to like shotgun beers and like the beer bong, and I'm just like, I'm just here to like chill. Like it's like, is this a problem or is a solution? Like why is everyone's just like, bah, like pour it into your eyes? Like,
I mean, I've been in those situations and stuff, and sometimes you know what? Sometimes it's just what the doctor ordered. I don't know, man, but
I mean,
yeah, sorry.
I mean, I've definitely gotten like, I've gotten drunk, and I've, like, I've had that. Supposedly there's footage of me from when People's Cider Company, they used to have just a tasting room where their production area is. And since they've expanded the production, they opened a tasting room closer to downtown. And at that old tasting room area, they did a festival, the May Day Fest. And, I was like stoked, because I was like, oh, I just get to hang out at this festival all day. I don't have to do anything. And my friend was pouring ciders. They have a cider called Morrissey's Ghost. That's like a 10% bourbon barrel, like cider, and it tastes great, but it's 10%.
Sure.
And they serve it in half.
It's the most Michigan thing I've ever heard in a long time.
Yeah, it's apple cider.
I drink this beer. It's 10%. Like what? I don't think the last time I had a 10% beer.
Yeah, that might have been the last time. I like maybe one or two when I worked at Founders, but I've gotten so burnt out on drinks. But there's footage of me because my friend was pouring. Every time I would get a drink, he'd pour me that. I'd drink it. I'd go up for another one. He would give me a drink to hand out. I would go hand out that drink. He would top off my drink coming back, because I would just keep assisting him. And then, by the time I'm playing, like, apparently I played the gig, but I was just like, just all like physically moving around a lot. And like, I people drove me home. I don't know who got my car back to the house. And I woke up on the floor, and it was like, I woke up at like 6:30, had to be at my school job at like 7:45, and I was like, this was bad. This was not how I and then of course
it's a good story. It's a good story now.
Yeah, it's a good story now. But what I guess was gonna say about undergrad was, it's speaking to the fact of like how much work goes into this thing, is like so many hours just feeling the pressure of like I didn't do any like competing in college, but the competition air was still there. Like you still wanted to like, it's like, all right, he's going to do 5 hours in the practice room. I've got 7. I'm going to do that. Even though you only get about 3 hours of practicing, like real practicing done in that time, because you're distracted. At least I was, but a lot of time in practice rooms, a lot of times playing for just strangers who couldn't care less you exist. A lot of time like pushing through all these things. But yeah, you get to that moment where you hear the album on the vinyl, you play that one show that like it fired off on all cylinders, and you felt creatively satisfied as well as like career satisfied. And
sure.
And yeah, it's like those moments, you push for more of those moments. And I think if that's kind of the goal, at least, trying to find those moments, there's a natural progression that happens in a career. But yeah, it's crazy to like the amount of music that's out there and the amount of demand that's not there. It's crazy.
It's just content in general. But based on what you're saying is I've seen the movie Soul now like 4 times. I've saw it like, once with my parents, once by myself, once with the girl I'm seeing, and once with my students. And there's a great line at the end that like the main jazz cat Dorothea Williams says. It's like I'm paraphrasing most of it, but it's like this young fish goes to the older fish and says, "I'm trying to go to the ocean," because he's like just played the gig and he's like, "What's next?" Oh, everyone goes home. It's like, what? There's no hang, and then so after he's almost died, the whole thing. So spoiler alert, sorry.
Yeah. What?
It's only in the first 5 minutes. It's only in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
He dies at the beginning. The beginning.
Yeah, basically. So she, the little fish goes to the big fish and says, like, I'm trying to go to the ocean. The big fish goes, "You're in the ocean." And the little fish goes, "No, this is water." And he goes, "No, you're in the ocean. Just look around. This is the ocean." And then swims away. And I think it's like, because of a lot of reasons. I mean, like dealing with older people who are like our professors who may be in weird spots in their careers or have had certain, quote unquote traditional jumps or not traditional jumps, or what whether the career means. And, people are at different spaces and you're at different times of your life and whatever. And like just trying to just be like, okay, like it's just an onward progression of moving forwards. And I think one thing I've learned in the last few years, especially teaching full time for now 4 years, it's like, efficiency. And I learned that in college too. I was super busy in undergrad, and and it's like, how efficient can I be with everything, and how can I, and just put out stuff that I'm proud of doing, and doing projects I'm proud of doing, and if it flops, it flops. But I think, again, our original conversation is like being happy with the art you're putting out, and just in dwelling in the process of it, and just kind of not getting caught up in the sea of other stuff.
Yeah, because it is, as much as like artists understand the nuance of the industry, I feel like a lot of thought patterns happen that mirror like the people who see like, oh, it's either the starving artist who's unappreciated until they die, and then 30 years after they die, there's an album someone features in a movie or something, and it's like, whoa, I never thought about that. Or you're like, the interstellar rise to fame, and you have an empire, and you have like your name is like it's on clothing and cars and movies.
Not
and
in the jazz. I mean, we played the wrong type of music, I think.
Yeah,
no, but I agree with that, and and it's, but I think it's like anything else. It's not binary.
Yeah,
like, it's not like one or the other. And like, what does it mean? I think there's also, it's like, I don't think there's enough conversation with younger people about, what it means, like what the real world actually like kind of looks like. I mean, obviously it's so much different than when we were in school, almost, we're going into school 10 years ago. I mean, this time I was in my freshman year of college, so 10 years ago. And I think it's obviously like the world changes very quickly, and depending where you are at. Like I went to school in the middle upstate New York. You were in West Michigan. Like, those are not like, we weren't at school like a Juilliard where you're like kind of in the middle of everything and you're kind of in the center of it. But there still should be, I don't even think they're having conversations like what we're having about, like, okay, I got this degree, then like, what do I do? And like, what does that mean to be the artist? Like, is it okay to take a job? Is it okay to teach full time and do this too? Or is it okay to, pursue other stuff and also be a musician or be an artist? And, it's, but even in those stories, like for every one John Coltrane, how many other people tried it? Yep. Or were that, that maybe they did other stuff and were still good, played gigs and, had a very fulfilling career, whatever that means. We're able to, raise a family and have a successful, I mean, there has to be hundreds, if not thousands of those type of people for every one of our heroes.
Yeah. And then even also like the fascination of, all the jazz heroes, obviously, you glean a ton of like vocabulary and like you understand kind of the development of the genre and like its interactions with the mainstream or other genres. And then you also are like, oh, well, this person was an alcoholic. This person abused like these substances. This
abused
person
women. Was married 3 times. Had a chocolate addiction. Was super overweight. probably would have, if they didn't die of that, they probably would have died of something else. It's like, and that, but that's also the extreme of it, of like obsession to where it's not like healthy.
No, it's that thing where it's like, I don't know, like it's not to necessarily be like, oh, well, Miles Davis, like he had his problems with women and like we should hate him entirely for just that. It's like, it's a nuanced discussion of like, yeah, there's a lot of things he did that are like, okay, personality wise is, this is outside of his artistic visions, and it's it's a weird glimpse into the humanity of it. And I don't know, like some people who emulate certain artists, I feel like there's a chance to get caught into some of those, like, you idolize a hero and you think like, oh, his muse was this and I'm going to try this. And it's like, well, what gets you inspired? It might not be the same thing, or it might not be a substance. It might not be, it might not even be the genre. It might be like you listen to John Coltrane and you're not going, I need to transcribe these tenor licks. Maybe you're listening to something else and you're like, how do I express on my instrument that way? Or how do I, put together a band that can do certain things like he does on his later records, or,
Sure. Yeah, I agree with all that. Yeah, and it's like personality, and it's, again, like doing whatever you feel like is necessary for you to deal with your vision. And for them, it was cool. And I'm sure there were people who tried to keep up, and they couldn't. And again, like, but does that mean that they were failures? Or
right.
Does that mean that they were, unfulfilled in their lives? I mean, you can't speak for everybody, obviously. And I think it's like, you just gotta, you only get so much time and to be worried about like others. All these things. And there's a bigger discussion that I have about like a concept I like to bring up sometimes of like, now it's hard to think about like all the years that those people were professionals. We talk about very select moments of a lot of years. And now within 5 minutes, I can listen to those I can bounce back between those years. We're talking about years, right? And so what about the day-to-day life of these people?
Yeah.
We glorify the big moments.
Yep.
When these albums were recorded, when these tours happened. But like,
yeah.
What about the Tuesday? Like, what about the random Tuesdays at 5:00?
Yeah.
6:00 that, were happening. Like, what did we do when he didn't have a gig? What did he do when he woke up, and like, how did he live his life, and how did he like, I'm sure it wasn't I'm sure it was intense, but it's also, it's glorified through myth, and stuff. But, I don't know. I just think as we're progressing, we all got to just figure out what we want to do and find our space, and no pun intended to my album, but but to figure it out. So
yeah, it's never. I think of how many people, they go through jazz school in Michigan and then they go out to like New York specifically, and they go with one idea of what they want to do, and then they get into that environment and figure out, okay, this is still there, that's still a goal, but now I have like, oh, I found this gig at this basement restaurant, it pays decent, I can play there once a week, like somehow I got this through a mutual friend, like there's my foot in the door, I can develop my artistic palette and start using that as a way to invite other people into the space, meet the community. It's like you get those moments of like interacting with another community that helps to, it helps to take something that's like a pipe dream and get more like concrete steps towards it.
Yeah. And like, but there's the bigger picture of that too. Like, okay, you get that gig, like cool, but like, how much is your rent?
Yeah.
Insurance, getting around, this thing called eating, or even buying, your
Never heard of
instruments.
it.
When, what is eating? Yeah. Or even like, and at that point, it's like you can't even think about putting out records because like you can't even. If you're paying a $50 gig once a week, you're not living in the, you're not playing that same $50 gig in 1970 or whatever, where the $50 is worth more. So, dude, man, I don't know. It's crazy. It's just, and I think it's a real disservice when people aren't real about, about what it actually means.
Yeah, and it's also like I never want to come across as like, elitist in thinking of like the gigging climate and the differences between like, this person has the stable job, they're in their 40s, they play acoustic guitar at a cafe with their buds, and they take that $50 acoustic thing because they don't have to eat with that $50. They do it because it's fulfilling to a hobby or their artistic side thing, which people can explore music and do side hobbies. It's weird sometimes to like if you're doing the right things and I guess growing and you're approaching venues and other places and trying to book, there should be a discerning, like, this person is doing more than just, one thing. They have a vision, they have a brand, they have like, they stand out creatively in some way. And I think I was trying to say like the whole like just the climate right now of like, as gigs start to open up again, there's been some people who've, they still are holding strong because they don't want to, take low paying things. There are other people who are taking those low paying things because it's open and they don't need the money and they just want the stage. And it's, I don't know. It's weird to try and like say what people should and shouldn't do. Like I wouldn't advocate necessarily for that. I feel like sometimes I run into those people who see music as like, it's the one dimension. Like he plays music. Doesn't matter that, he's been playing for 20 years and has 2 degrees versus that person's been playing for 4 years and has, 30 friends that show up to buy meals. Like, it's music is like, there's always going to be the people who support the creative thing. And then there's always going to be the people who support the functional part of it. Like, oh, this is a nice compliment to the meal or the room. This is a relaxing environment for the guests at a hotel. This is the whatever. And, being in both of those spaces of like doing the creative thing and doing the background thing, I see the utility in both. Creativity is obviously like great. But
but also says who says you can't be creative in those spaces?
Yeah. I definitely.
And I have a jobbing gig in 2 days on Thursday night. Like my gig was a background gig, and I hired people I wanted to play with.
Yep.
We're gonna play tunes, and I'm still gonna be as creative as I can in that experience, even though it's not like a gig. It's not a formal playing gig, and the fact that I'm, and again, I also tried to advocate for myself and advocate, financially for the ensemble about how much we were going to get paid, and you got to stick up for that and be like, well, I feel like I'm paying people what they should be being paid for a gig on a Thursday night in a corporate situation, because, knowing the ins and outs of it. And I'm not even talking about like my financial, whatever, my, what's what I'm looking for? Like my financial situation. I mean, that's not, I've had a lot, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the point is that like we're still all there to support each other, and it's like if you can, if I can give somebody $100 for the gig plus it's for end of the hour and then whatever it is, and I'm able to work that out with whoever's hiring me, like hopefully then in the future, like if they hire me, I can ask for a little bit more, or we can if and that could be a working relationship with this company, and that's not a normal thing. So
yeah, I don't know. The discussion around like
that's about how we should get paid is not something I think is going to be solved on this podcast or by us. It should be this. I know I don't want to be. I'll be in charge of a lot of things. I'll help make decisions. I don't want anything around that decision of how much people should get paid. That's not my business. I mean, not much of my business, but it's not something that. I mean, I'll advocate for people, but I don't want to. I'll lead the other charge of other things.
Yeah, because it's like I don't, I bring it up to not. It's weird to talk about because you don't want to slam someone who still has a passion but might have they have a different set of circumstances or it's not their main focus, and sure, that's fine. Everyone's got something different that they go for with pursuing an art or pursuing a craft, pursuing an instrument. And then even then, I'm also understand the other end of it too, where like you could be Captain Creativity and have like no draw, no presence, no nothing to like incentivize people to want to hire you to do anything. Like you could be, immensely talented, but if you don't get along with anyone, you're just going to be sitting in your room wondering why you're not getting any gigs.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Like that's especially apparent in West Michigan. It's like you got to find the people who could put up with you, or else like there's no you're gonna be drifting until either you learn that there's something about that you need to change to be more open to certain types of things, or I don't know. It varies, scene to scene, obviously, but it's I don't know, the ebb and flow of like, how do I, be the working musician? Like people asking me like, oh, all you do is music. Like, how does that work? I'm like, well, here's how it works.
How much time you got there, buddy?
Yeah. How many combinations of things are you willing to do to
how thin are you going to stretch yourself to figure it out?
Yeah. Do you like the taste of the same kinds of foods and on a daily basis? Because that's what you're going to budget into your life, unless you know how to cook, I guess. But it's yeah. But yeah, thanks for coming on. I feel like this is a great conversation. And what your album comes out
July 9th through Outside of Music. The first single comes out in a month from now, June 10th, the Friday. Its first single is called Revolving Twins. It's also when the pre-order is going to start on Bandcamp or through me, and then everything will be sent out for the 9th. And then actually pretty excited, we're doing a live stream gig on the 8th of July for the album at the Fulton Street Collective, which is a great space here in Chicago. Will be live streamed, and we'll get out into the world, and hopefully there'll be some other little pop-up things, and you go on my Instagram, the Sam Pilnick project. There'll be some updates and some other opportunities, hopefully, to talk about the record, get your hands on it, see it, feel it, all that stuff. But man, I appreciate you having me on. I'm glad you're trucking along and doing these things, and I think it's I honor you for doing what you're doing and doing it things. And if you ever need my help with anything, video stuff, whatever, another set of ears, I'm gonna get into a lot of that stuff. So whatever you need from me, my friend, I feel like I owe you for both my album and for this, my last album, the one you were on.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to. I guess I've heard the record, but I'm looking forward to seeing it out in the world, and just a nonet is a great opportunity to especially listen to the album, the different colors, different textures. It's a more expanded way to express your writing. So I think that's a great move.
I'm also I'll be honest, I'm very afraid to write for big bands. So it's the largest ensemble at the moment I'm going for. Unless I can take more classes with Scott Cowan or something, but
yeah, I feel like I needed another like 2 years after I took that arranging semester.
Never took it. So I was the TA for it, and I had something before, and I was never there. So, but, all right, man. I actually got a dip, but thank you for having me. We'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, sounds great.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem.